Brian here from Headstrong. I hope you are well. I am here back with you having more positive conversations around mental health. And today we're talking about a very specific thing to do with your mental health. Today we are talking about therapy. And what I want to talk to you about is all the different types of therapy, all the different ways that they work, all the different things that they do, so that you can make an informed choice when you decide that you might need some help, or someone that you love or care for might need some help. One of the things that I hear from lots of people is, I've been for therapy and it didn't really work. Well, you can't really say that. That's not how it works. Every type of therapy has its own pros and cons. That for me would be the equivalent of saying, well, I had one relationship once and we argued quite a bit, so I've decided. Now, I know that some of you actually do run that thing, that you've had that one partner, then you think, well, that's it. I'm never going out with anybody again. I'm never being married again because they're all the same. I'm telling you, they're not all the same. And the same goes for therapy. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through all these different types of most common therapy. I know there are some therapies I'm not going to mention. And I will tell you just now, I'm going to be scathing about some of these therapies, including the one that I do. But we're going to get to that as we get through. And where I'm going to start is, I'm going to start with the most common therapy that people access, which is person-centered counselling. Hi there. My name is John. I'm your counsellor. Just tell me what's going on. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Tell me more about that. You've done really well today, okay. That's your time. I'll see you next week. Well done, you did great. What the is that? This is many people's experience of counselling. And this is my issue with it, is traditional person-centred counselling, which is still offered for me way too often. There are some amazing new types of counselling, psychodynamic counselling, some incredible things where actually people are more active. But there are still thousands of counsellors out there doing traditional person-centred counselling, which basically involves them sitting and nodding at you for hours. You tell a lot of story, you probably cry a lot, and nothing seems to change. Basically, you find whatever the problem is and you dive so deep into it that it recovers all the trauma and makes you feel crap again. I'm just not into that at all. And not only that, but it takes bloody years. Like the standard person-centered counselling for anxiety is somewhere around 3 years. That is just way too long and way too painful. One of the things that I find from many people that I speak to who have been through person-centered counselling is that they see the whole process as an ordeal. I don't believe that you should come out of any therapy dreading your next session, but people are like, oh my God, I've got therapy today. Oh jeez, I don't know if I'm ready for it. Because actually the whole process is so emotionally difficult. Therapy should not add to your trauma. It should be helping with your trauma. Yet again and again and again, people are sent for person-centered counselling and just find themselves traumatised by the whole experience. If I had to put fear of therapy onto one particular thing, it would be person-centered counselling, because it is very, very tough, very emotionally difficult. Now, I will say, because I did say I'd do pros and cons. As I said, there are some new modern counselling methods out there that are a lot more effective. Things like psychodynamic counselling and people who are blending counselling with a little bit of coaching, because traditionally you weren't meant to give any guidance. So now at least they're giving support and guidance and help. And if you can find a counsellor that does that, you've technically speaking really got a coach. And even though I might think that it might take a little bit longer, that's absolutely fine. We're going to come to coaching later on. So person-centred counselling takes ages, is sometimes exceptionally traumatic. If you're going to go for that, then please find a more modern one and make sure that you do a little bit of a check out of who it is that you're going to be talking to. If your therapy is difficult, then for me, it does not need to be that way and you should find something else. Okay. Let's move on now to one that you'll get through the medical model. So let's move on to psychology, psychotherapy, and psychiatry. And let me tell you the difference, because there are some subtle differences between the three of these. Okay, let's go. Okay, there are some big differences between these three things. So what we're going to look at is psychologists, psychiatrists, and then we'll look at psychotherapists. So psychologists are somebody who went to university to study psychology. So they have purely studied psychology. A psychiatrist, on the other hand, is a medical doctor who has specialised in mental health and psychiatry. So they were originally trained as a doctor, then they take that as a specialism in the same way as a gynecologist might, but you get the general idea. They're just looking into a different part of you, that's all. A psychotherapist could be generally anybody trained in mental health that's done some sort of specialist training, perhaps in CBT, which we'll talk about later on, and many other things. There are people who are medical psychotherapists, who therefore are doctors who have then taken a 4-year extra degree to study psychotherapy, but that you get the general idea. But here's the differences for you if you're thinking about going for therapy or if you've been referred to a psychologist or psychiatrist. My personal view is what psychology and psychiatry do is they give you labels on things. So they will sit, they will listen to your problem, and then they'll tell you who you are, and they'll put a big label on you. So, for instance, that you have a personality disorder, or that you have an anxiety disorder, or you have this thing. And the whole word, even disorder, is very, very medical. The difference, again, between a psychologist and a psychiatrist is that because a psychiatrist is a medical doctor, they will be able to give you drugs, which at least might cheer your day up, I suppose, if you go out there with some nice drugs that make you feel nice. If you're wondering if you should take medication for your mental health, then check out the video that I've done on medication for mental health, where I'll tell you all about it and everything that I see from the clients that I work with in my own personal experience. Sometimes it's an okay idea, sometimes it's not, but go and look at the video if you're wondering about that. So, if you go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you'll tend to come out with a label. And the problem with that label is that many people then use that as an identity. It's very easy then to walk out and go, well, my psychiatrist says I have borderline personality disorder. I know it's got a new name now. I can't remember what it is. They've called it something else. But I've got borderline personality disorder. So that means, and now what you use it as is an excuse for staying stuck. That is not useful. I genuinely mean this when I say that almost every mental health problem can be eradicated. It doesn't have to be managed or supported. And my issue with many psychologists and psychiatrists is that all they're doing is managing these issues. So, psychology, psychiatry, both very similar, but one of them can give you drugs. And their positives is they'll at least be able to tell you that you're not alone because they'll be able to put a label on something. The negative of that, of course, is that then where do you go from there? Do you just stay stuck now with this label? The number of people that I meet with clinical depression because some psychologist has told them they have clinical depression, so this is how I'm going to be for the rest of my life. I personally refute that completely. I knock that back. That is bullshit. It does not need to be that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the therapies that I think can really make a difference. And we're going to start that with the most common one in the UK that's now prescribed through the NHS. Cognitive behavioural therapy, also known as CBT. Okay, CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy. Now, the therapy that I do and CBT, I actually do little bits of CBT, albeit that I must admit I'm not fully qualified. I don't have a certificate to say it, but I've now been around mental health for that many years that I've picked up their exercises. And the good news is that we share a model. Now, what I mean by that is that we share the same thought, that thoughts cause feelings. So, if you were to go to someone that's a CBT professional, they will be approaching it as, can we work out what your thoughts inside your head are? The only difference between what they do and what I do is the fact that they do what I would call an outside-in approach. So there's lots of homework, which I've got to admit for teenagers can quite often put them off. So if you're in the UK, again, CAM, so Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, that's offered through the NHS, much of their model is based on counselling and CBT. Now, the issue is if you've got a 15-year-old who's already anxious and not enjoying school, as soon as you go, now, here's the sheet, and what I want you to do is I want you to look at these 40 emotions, And what I want you to do every day is I want you to look at these 40 emotions and tell me which ones you feel. And when you do feel them, I then want you to mark them out of 10 to tell me how intensely you feel. And you're like, oh my God, I can't even do my English homework. Why are you expecting me to do this that actually makes me feel bad? Now, not every piece of CBT homework is meant to make you feel bad. Of course, there's some really effective bits. And I genuinely do believe it can be a very, very effective therapy as long as you get the right CBTer. Now, within this little bit of CBT, I just want to speak about something else. I want to speak about CAMS. Now, I know that you might not be in the UK, but in the UK, CAMS is a service that's provided by the NHS for free therapy for children and adolescents. Now, one of the issues that many parents have is, number one, getting into CAMS, and number two, once they're there, is being treated right. Now, can I just say, the people who work in CAMS genuinely want to help, but they are so under-resourced that basically what happens is they can have all the brilliant skills in the world, they can have all the best CBT skills, but when they're measured by how many people get in the room and out of the room, they just don't have the time. So if you are wanting to engage with CBT, my recommendation is find somebody private. Find a private CBT supplier, and there will be loads of them around you. There will be somebody who is really effective at CBT, but right at the end of this video, I'm going to talk to you about how to choose a good therapist no matter which one of these you choose, but I'll get into that in just a little minute. So CBT, homework, but has a brilliant thing where thoughts cause feelings, which is exactly the type of thing that I subscribe to, that if you change how you think, then you change how you feel. I just think that the method that they use to do it can be a little bit sore, a little bit painful, and sometimes take a little bit longer than it needs to. But do you know what? It's generally effective and it's okay. So let's move on. And now we get on to one that a lot of people are scared of. Let's move on to hypnotherapy. Okay, so hypnotherapy. Now, you would think that I would love hypnotherapy because I do hypnotherapy. I train people in hypnosis and hypnotherapy. Not only that, but it's a big part of some of the things that we do as part of our practice. Now, number one, let me answer the first thing. Should you be scared of hypnotherapy? Well, of course you shouldn't. Trance work is something that happens all the time. In fact, all of the therapies that I've just mentioned put you into different types of trances. You could argue, for instance, that counselling puts you into a majorly negative crap trance where all you do is you focus all your attention on the rubbish things that have happened through your life, and then you talk about them incessantly. And actually, if you've ever experienced that, you may have experienced a very similar experience to trance, which is that feeling that when the person goes, okay, that's your time, you've done really well today, thanks very much. And that's the end bit that you get, that you think, oh my God, was that 45 minutes? Was that an hour already? And that's because you spent time hypnotised, you spent time in this trance place. The myth about hypnosis is that somebody has control of your mind. They 100% don't. They're just guiding you through their mind. Although I will admit, and this is one of the negatives of hypnosis, is that many hypnotherapists like you to think they have control of your mind because it gives them some sort of ego complex or power trip. I don't know what it is. If you ever meet a hypnotherapist that says, I'm going to take control of your mind, run the other direction as fast as you can. One of the things that I remember being trained in when I was very early into my training in hypnosis was the fact that these things are something that's done with a client or a patient or a customer, whatever you want to call yourself. But what it's not is, it's not done to your client. It's not done to your patient. It's done with, not done to. And that's a really, really important thing to understand when you go for hypnotherapy. Now, hypnotherapy is hugely, hugely effective. If you can find a brilliant hypnotherapist, they genuinely can change your life in incredibly short times. The challenge is that many modern hypnotherapists don't take the time to understand the full problem, and they also work off scripts. So what I mean by that is, and this isn't true again of every hypnotherapist, I'm just saying this is a generalised thing for many of them, is that when you go in and you say, I've got anxiety, what they do is they go through their big book of scripts and they go, and to find the page that says anxiety script, and they go, excellent, okay, this is great. Now, you're going to enjoy this over the next little while, but what I need you to do first is I just need you to close your eyes. Now, as you imagine sitting there, floating inside your mind. And off they go, and they begin reading the same script that they've used for 200 other people who have all experienced the same anxiety symptoms as you. Now, this is all right. This is okay. And it will work for maybe, 100 out of the 200? But if they just took a little bit of time and scrapped the scripts, then all of a sudden they'd be able to make it effective for all 200 people. I don't believe that in these kind of 2-hour stop smoking things. I know that you'll know people who have gone, I went to hypnotherapy, 2 hours stopped smoking, not had a fag in 30 years. They were the 100 that it worked for, but there's another 100 who walked away going, it didn't work, to be honest, it was a bit rubbish. So please choose your hypnotherapist carefully. Never be scared of closing your eyes. We only do that so that you've shut out the outside world so you can concentrate on yourself. Your hypnotherapist is a tour guide. But just watch for those ones that have a little bit of a power trip. So, hypnotherapy pros, and the good things, hugely effective, exactly where you need to go to be able to create massive, massive shifts. But one of the negatives is that sometimes you get a little bit of a one-size-fits-all treatment, and that's not very effective. Okay. Now to move on to the one that I started with and the one that principally makes up most of what I do. And this is a thing called NLP or Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Let's see how we got on with this one. Okay, NLP or Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Now you would expect, because I am an NLP trainer, I've been doing NLP now for 17 years as I record this. So 2003 I did my first training, in case you're not watching this in 2020. What a bloody year. If you're in the future, can I just ask, is it better? Can you send a message back to me somewhere? Just put in the comments, I am a messenger from the future. We have a vaccine. Everything is better. You will meet your friends and family again. But anyway, as I sit here and record this, it is 2020. So yeah, anyway, that's by the way. NLP is a fascinating collection of different types of therapy, and it was taken from modelling people who were very, very effective at what they did. So what I mean by that is that they looked at people who were great at what they did, such as Milton Erickson, a world-class hypnotherapist and the grandfather of modern hypnotherapy, a lady called Virginia Satir, who was an amazing family therapist and psychotherapist, worked a lot with dysfunctional families and young people, and a whole range of other people, and they looked at them and they went, how do they do what they do? And then what they did was they coded it in a way that then people could pick up very, very quickly. Now, as I'll come on to in a minute, this is one of the problems of NLP, but I'll come back to that in a minute. Why is it brilliant? Well, we share that same thought about it as CBT, as cognitive behavioural therapy. Thoughts cause feelings. So therefore, if we can change how you think, we can change how you feel. So many therapies focus on how you're feeling, and they miss completely how you're thinking. And I include psychiatry and psychology in that they focus so much on how they feel that they miss the fact that you're thinking. This is why CBT is such an effective therapy. And this is why NLP, in the right hands, can transform your life. Because we understand that the difference between us and CBT is that we take an inside-out approach. Now, what I mean by that is, let me give you an example. If you were to imagine that a standard CBT approach, let's say that you were scared of crowds. Okay, so let's imagine you said you had a fear, you didn't like being in busy places. That wasn't necessarily your fear, but you didn't like being in busy places. What a CBT therapist may do, I'm not saying they would do, but they may do, is to take you into a busy place. And in fact, if you want to see an example of some terrible therapy, absolutely terrible therapy, if you're in the UK, the BBC put out a programme a little while ago called Anxiety and Me that starred the lovely lady that won Bake Off, Nadia Hussain. And if you want to watch some terrible CBT therapy, watch that therapy. And what he did was he took her, after she said that she was worried about these things, he took her through a very busy train station in Manchester. And then what he did was he took her all the way to London on a very busy train. And you can tell just by looking at Nadia all the way through this that she is shitting herself all the way through this process. Now, she feels great at the end, but you know how if you've ever been on a roller coaster or gone to see like a really scary movie and you've hated every minute of it, but when you come out the other side, the relief gives you this kind of euphoric blast that you come off going, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. And you're like, and you're like high as a kite, but you're high as a kite on pure adrenaline. Well, this is what happens to her, and she thinks that she's managed to get over her problem, but actually he's not addressed her problem at all. Now, if you went to an NLPer, we wouldn't take you anywhere near a train station. What we'd do is we'd put the train station inside your mind and we'd ask you to imagine things, we'd ask you to create things, we might even get you standing up and walking and doing things around the room as you allow your unconscious to process the different thinking style. It can be transformational when in the right hands. But this brings me on, just for fairness, to one of the cons of NLP and what I do. And I speak as an NLP trainer. There are many, many people out there that say things like, I'm an NLP practitioner and I can help you. And they are charging big bucks. They are charging big amounts because their trainers, can I just say we do not ask our trainees to do this, because their trainers have told them to charge big bucks because now you know this process. That now, because you have this sheet of paper and you've been on this very short course that says step 1 to step 6, this is what you do, that if you follow this, you can charge someone £100 a session. That is crap. They have no experience. They have not earned their stripes, as I call it. And what you're really looking for, because an NLP practitioner can genuinely help you, but you need to understand their level of experience. And if somebody's maybe new and out of the wrapper, can they help you transform the big problems in your life? Absolutely. If they're passionate about doing it, they can, but they should be charging appropriately for their level of experience. So NLP, massively effective, changes the way you think and potentially can change the way you think forever. On average, for instance, at Headstrong, we only see clients round about 4 sessions. So for about 4 sessions, and the problem's gone. It's not managed or anything. We're talking the problem being gone. But we are very experienced and we know what we're doing. So watch for the cons of people who are charging big bucks, who have no idea what they're doing. They're just chucking techniques at you with no knowledge of what's happening. So that's all of the different main therapies that you can get. But let's just do one last little add-on here. How do you know if the therapist is actually good? Whatever therapy you go for, let me just give you a little bit of a guide on choosing a good therapist. Okay, here's all I want to say to you about choosing a good therapist. Choosing a good therapist should be a little bit like choosing a car. Now, what I mean by that is that it's quite often chosen on the feel. You know, if you go to a car showroom and somebody can stand in front of like some vehicle and what they'll say to you is, well, here's this car and it's got 75 horsepowers and it has 200 torques and its wheels are this big and it's got this system that does this and this system that does that, and it's been designed by German engineers within an inch of its life. And you look at it, what's the first thing you're going to ask? You're going to say, can I have a test drive, please? And if the test drive is absolutely crap and it just feels like you're driving a brick, the chances are that you're not going to choose it. Unless, of course, you are somebody who wants to drive a brick, which you might be if you're trying to keep your baby safe or something like that. But for most of us, what we look for when we drive a car is the feel, the way it handles, how it makes us like, and the feel doesn't need to be that it's going at 180 like down the motorway. The feel could be that it feels safe, it feels okay, and whatever it is that your values are. Now, what we do when we go and choose somebody for therapy is that quite often what people do is they choose it off the manual and they make some mistakes, and there's 2 of them that I want to bring your attention to, and they're all to do with letters. They're to do with letters before and then letters after the name. So let's focus on the letters after the name first. The thing about letters after their name is that quite often they are a lot of bullshit, depending on what it is that you're speaking to. I'm not saying that doctors haven't got all these qualifications. That's great. But just because they've got all these qualifications does not mean that they can engage or have any connection with someone. If you've watched this whole video, for instance, that Anxiety and Me documentary with Nadia Hussain that we talked about earlier, that was one of the top CBT lecturers from some university in somewhere. He was meant to be academically one of the most experienced and understanding therapists in this country. Yet he had zero bedside manner. He had no idea how to make a connection, and in fact, when you watch the videos, all it looks like is two people sitting in a room together, rather than that thing that we talked about earlier where two people are doing something together to be able to help one of them get to a better place. It seems as if it's being done to her academically more than anything else. So for instance, I know somebody who has roughly about 30 letters after their name, and it looks massively impressive on a website, but actually many of them mean nothing. They are absolutely just there to hoodwink you into thinking that this person has a million qualifications, and they are qualified. But many of those letters don't talk about their qualifications. They talk about different membership groups that they have, and in fact, one of them, which is something that I'm passionate about, says MPNLP, which is Master Practitioner of NLP, which, can I just say, any proper NLPer won't put after their name, if you ask me. But MPNLP, that person did that certificate over the course of 6 hours in one day. That course should be at the very least 10 days, if you ask me. And when I did mine, it was 14 days. And some people do 30-day Master Practitioner programs. It is an absolute joke. Now, the other letters are the ones that goes before the name, and it tends to be 2 letters, DR. Should you pay attention to anybody that's a doctor? Well, again, I bring you back to that television programme. And I bet that even medically, I know that I know that you, as you sit here, will have met a doctor at some point that you did not like. And maybe even a doctor that you walked away from thinking, I'm not exactly sure they really had a clue what I was talking about or whether they listened to me. Do not be fooled by the fact that someone is a doctor. They also, which was something I heard of from a friend of mine was happening down in England, was that there was somebody that was advertising themselves as a doctor, whatever, as a psychologist down there, which they were a CBTer. But they were advertising themselves as Dr. So-and-so, and their doctorate was in engineering. They're not lying. They were Dr. So-and-so, but their doctorate was nothing to do with what they were actually doing in terms of the psychology part of things, but it made them look impressive. Now, I'm sure they were very effective. I'm sure they were brilliant at what they do, but please do not be fooled. Many of these letters are just illusions. So, when you're choosing a psychologist or a psychotherapist or a counsellor or a therapist or an NLPer or a CBTer or whatever it is, what I would suggest is you find someone that speaks your language, somebody that you engage with, someone that you feel as if you click with in the same way that when you take your car out for a test drive, you just feel safe, you feel as if it gets you, you feel as if you're connected to it, and it feels like it could take you on some incredible journeys. I know. You've got to admit, though, you've got to let me away with that. I mean, I've been talking for half an hour now. You have to let me away with that little bit of cheese. Yeah, come on. Take you on some incredible journeys. Anyway, so what I want you to do is go out there now in the realms of social media, check their YouTube channels, check their social media, speak to them on the phone before you've booked an appointment, get a feel for them. And if the feel is, I know that they can help me, then you go for it. But remember, you're never stuck. So if it's not feeling as if once you start, as if it fits you, if it's making you feel worse, if you're not feeling great after at least 2 sessions and you're not starting to feel better, you should be asking your therapist about what's going on. I hope you've enjoyed today's video as we took a whirlwind tour through the world of therapy. As I've said today, there's lots of different types you have to find, just like the car example, you have to find the one that fits you. If you love counselling, you keep going for it. Please do. I'm not knocking it at all if you've got a great counselor counsellor. High five to you, high five to your counsellor. Fantastic, keep going. For me, the three most effective ones, CBT, which in the UK at least you can get free through the NHS, so you can go to your doctor and ask to be referred for cognitive behavioural therapy, but understand a bit about the homework and you're going to have to work hard for it, but it can be very effective. Hypnotherapy, it's going to be privately funded, but it can be very effective, and there's some amazing hypnotherapists out there doing some amazing things and can create massive change for you as long as they ditch their scripts. And then the one that I do, which is NLP, and if you think that we can help you here at Headstrong, because we do one-to-one sessions as well, then anywhere in the world, doesn't matter where you are, please message us and we would love to talk to you. And we can even talk like this about what we do and how we can help and how we can get you back and on track again with your mind performing and doing all the things that you want it to do. Yeah, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm Brian from Headstrong. Lovely to speak to you again. And please subscribe to our channel on whatever it is and look at our other videos. Check out everything that we're doing at the moment. Check out our Instagram and our Facebook. That's coming up just in a wee minute if you want to come and find us. And I'm going to speak to you again soon. See you soon. Bye.